Hello, welcome to Prospects to Pros. I am your host, Nate Tice. We have a mock scenario simulator that Dane, Brugler, and I are going to be doing today, where we will be looking at the top 12 picks 1 through 12. Why 12? We just picked 12. It's a nice cutoff, and you'll see why. We're going to go over each and every single team, all the situations, because there's a lot of paths these teams could take. Might as well go over all of them. It's that time of season. It's draft season. And to help me do that, of course, I already mentioned him, but is the athletics draft expert himself. And in his season, Mr. Dane Brugler. How you doing today, Dane?
I'm good. We're pre-combine, so there's a lot of this is going to change that we're going to talk about. But there's a lot of intrigue with a lot of these picks and what direction they could go, and the quarterbacks, and how many quarterbacks are we going to see in the top 12? So, and again, this stuff is going to change. Free agency will change things. Certain decisions that need to be made between now and the draft will change things. But yeah, this is going to be a fun conversation as we kind of work through all these different scenarios.
Yeah, and we're going to have a combine primer, which the NFL combine will be in Indianapolis, as always, or at least for the next year or two. We'll be there next week. Dane and I will both be there. Robert will be there. Everybody will be there from the Athletic, just about, it seems like. But we'll also have some shows for you from there, but a primer before and then a recap after the combine. So make sure to check that out on the Athletic Football Show's feed and Prospects to Pros. But pick one, the driver's seat, pole position, whatever you want to, both car analogies. But we got, I was going to say Caleb Williams. We got the Chicago Bears.
The Ryan Poles position is what you're saying?
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. I know that's a New York Daily News headline. We got the Bears at pick one via the Carolina Panthers. Now, plenty of paths that they can go along. But Dane, where would you start with the Bears, and what are some of these situations and scenarios that they go through these next couple months?
I think most Bears fan base, they've come around to the idea that this pick is going to be a quarterback. Still a few holdouts, according to my mentions on Twitter, but anything other than a quarterback to Chicago at 1 would be a major surprise. And now with that said, if you're Ryan Poles, you're keeping the phone lines open, right? You want to know what other teams are going to possibly put out there at trade interest. There are desperate teams out there for a quarterback. You never know the offers you might get. But anything other than a quarterback here at 1 to Chicago, I think would be a pretty major surprise. And I would also say anything other than Caleb Williams at 1 would be a surprise for me. Just guessing what they're going to do. Now, who knows? Maybe the Bears will come to a different conclusion. But I think it's an interesting. We've talked about these quarterbacks since August, between Caleb and Drake, and then Jaden Daniels entered the convo. How everyone's going to look at these guys a little bit differently. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's not crazy to think that Chicago and their brain trust might think of, might have Drake May at number 1, or who knows, maybe in Jaden Daniels. But I still think Caleb Williams, where we are right now going into the combine, he is still the favorite to be that number 1 overall pick. And anything other than him, I think would be a surprise at this point.
Not just to you, but it would be to Vegas as well. Caleb Williams right now is minus 1,500 to be the number 1 pick. That doesn't say to the Bears, though. It just says the number 1 overall pick. So that's another thing as well, is we don't know if there's going to be some flopperoo, swapperoo action with some of these teams that we'll see, but it's tons of craziness. But yeah, Caleb Williams seems to me to be the consensus at this point in time. Of course, I'm a Drake May guy, and I've been mocking him to the Bears at 1 as well. And he has maybe some height, weight, speed stuff that, Poles likes. He is a kind of a guy that seems to like that kind of height, weight, speed stuff with all of his positions. Maybe quarterback's one of them. But May, Williams just seems QB dash guy.
One more thing with the Bears, too, is I think at the combine is when we're really going to start to hear the Justin Fields rumors pick up about specific landing spots. I know we've heard the Steelers, the Falcons feel like an obvious fit, but I think we're going to hear more about those talks heat up in Indy. And I think it'll be interesting about whoever trades for them, because you have to have a plan in place for Fields, meaning you're talking to the agent, you're working out a Jordan Love type of deal. So you can decline that 5th-year option. And then when you trade for him, come up with a feasible 2-year deal, similar to what the Packers did with Love last year. So whether that ends up being, you have to trade, I still lean towards it's going to be too day 2 picks, one day 2 pick this year and then a conditional pick next year based off of playing time. But, these trades are always based on the market and, the number of interested suitors that are going to be making a bid on Fields, which is a really, we won't go too far down that conversation, but that's a really interesting separate topic about who should be in the sweepstakes for Fields, how much should they give up, and then, how you use your offense to get the most out of him. So but that's a completely separate conversation. But again, something that I think will really start to heat up when we're in Indianapolis.
Oh, I'm sure. And especially maybe some of these teams, like you said, that are QB needy and they go, well, do I want to trade a war chest for Jane Daniels and move up to 3 or something? Or do I just trade a second and take a receiver with that number 1 pick I have? Some of that's where I'm looking at teams like the Falcons or the Broncos or Raiders or any of these teams that could be frisky in the season, in the draft season. No, but I think that's a great point with Fields is that I was looking at some recent trades. There was the Sam Bradford trade the week of the season. That was a first rounder. I was looking at, I just looked at every example possible just to see what this price would be. The Carson Wentz trade recently when he went to the Colts.
Right.
I know they followed with Washington. The Darnold trade was a bunch of several day 2 picks as well. So it seems like that day 2, but then it becomes it might be a little bidding war as teams get a little bit more desperate. So that's going to be really interesting. But another QB needy team at 2, Washington Commanders. Right now, it seems like they'll kind of that interesting position that they could go with the 1B if the other team doesn't go with the 1A. It might be their 1A, or there's the wild horse, wild card, which is also, with Daniels. So where do you think their kind of scenarios lie right now, the Washington Commanders, Dane?
This is a quarterback, right? It's just a matter of which one. The last 30 years, Commanders or the Washington organization, they've drafted a top 10 quarterback just once, and that was RG3. And that's kind of crazy. That was a dozen years ago. God, we're getting old. But so this franchise is overdue. There you go. Yeah. This franchise, they're overdue for a quarterback, to take a swing on a really talented quarterback in the top 10, top 5, top 3. And you and I both agree that if Williams goes 1, it should be May at number 2. And it's not impossible to think that they could come to the conclusion that Daniels is their guy. But, we're on the same page. Drake May should be the pick if Williams goes 1. I think it gets interesting. What kind of conversations are they going to have with Chicago at 1? Just to kind of put a few feelers out there, see, what would it cost to swap picks 1 and 2? Who knows? Maybe Chicago has a really close grade on both Caleb and Drake May. And if the trade compensation is enough, you're okay going with Drake May instead of Caleb. Who knows? Maybe Drake May is their top quarterback. Right. But if it's close enough, trade back 1 spot, get more draft capital, still get the quarterback that you really, really like and think can be a top 10 to 12 quarterback in this league. Washington goes up. You reunite Cliff Kingsbury with Caleb Williams. Bring Caleb home. He's a DC guy. So the Washington conversations with Chicago, just to put out those feelers, I think will be really interesting. It's only moving back 1 spot, but you're moving away from Caleb Williams. And what will the price tag be for a team like Washington to pull that off?
We talk about intangibles with players too, but there's also with teams. Owners, new ownership might go, hey, we get the guy, we get the hometown guy. We want to buy as much fan goodwill as possible. Let's lock it down, guarantee that it happens.
That'll do it.
That'll do it, especially with the new owner and new GM, new head coach, all these types of things.
Adam Peters and right.
The OC. Okay, well, then the OC, Cliff Kingsbury being Caleb Williams' guy is interesting as well. It's funny. You mentioning that Washington hasn't taken a quarterback in the first round since RG3. Then they took Kirk Cousins.
Well, top 10.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because they did take Dwayne Haskins and
I forgot about Dwayne Haskins.
Who else did they take?
Because I was going all the Jason Campbell. They took
Jason Campbell. That was
Keith Schuler.
That was I think that was the last one they took top 10, right? In 94.
Yeah, and then they took Gus Frerotte later. And I think Frerotte beat him out or something like that. Yeah, Schuler. Right. I think it was state representative. But I know my brain was going all the way back there. We had Campbell. Campbell was with the Bears when my dad was there. I hate when I do that. That was one of the most impressive looking quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. Holy crap. I get it. I get why I know he had the whole offensive coordinator change, but we'll talk about Jason Campbell at a different time. But pick 3. maybe another quarterback landing spot. Really huge pivot point in the draft with the Patriots there right now, because any kind of path makes sense, at least to me, about what they could take. What are some that stand out to you, Dane? What are some of those paths that maybe stand out to me, Dane?
Okay, so I think this Patriots are fascinating, and I think regardless of what they end up doing, they're going to Indianapolis hoping that the top 3 quarterbacks crush it. Caleb, Drake, and then Jaden Daniels. They want to see all 3 test great, throw the ball well, interview at the best of their abilities. I don't know what they're going to say publicly, but I 100% believe they want to draft a quarterback. They're looking at their own depth chart. They know what they have right now. They know it's not good enough. The proof is on the tape. You need to do something to upgrade. And if you're hoping that all 3 of these quarterbacks impress you when you're in Indianapolis, because that way you'll have options. You could stick and pick and take the quarterback, but regardless, even if you end up coming to the conclusion that this is a 2 quarterback class and that they go 1 and 2 and you're missing out on your guy at 3, you still hope these 3 guys crush it, because then your phone's going to be blowing up. The Giants, the Falcons, Denver, Minnesota, Vegas, teams calling, making offers to go up to get number 3. And then at the end of the day, you have a decision to make about trading back or going with the top non-quarterback, whether that's Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, whoever it ends up being for New England. But I 100% believe they want to draft a quarterback. That is their hope, to come away from the combine saying, all right, yeah, you know what? We'd be fine with any one of these 3 guys, and we are sitting in a good spot to do it. So time will tell. Gerard Mayo, first year head coach. Elliott Wolf, obviously we know, his dad and everything he did in Green Bay. Elliott's well respected around the league. Yes, he's bounced around. He's worked under a lot of different GMs, from John Dorsey and his dad, and with what he's done in New England. And so, how will his approach be to this? But I think from ownership down, they want a quarterback.
It's interesting because he also, being literally Ron Wolf's son, that Wolf is generally known as kind of the height, weight, speed, athleticism, traits, all these types of things. So it's, and Belichick kind of had a little bit of that, but it was different. It was more about size, I would say, and football kind of wherewithal, which kind of got him some hurt at some skill position spots. But right. His defensive linemen were a certain type, and so that's always just an interesting kind of mindset change than what we've seen maybe in New England the last 2 decades. But no, it's a great point. Elliott Wolf, he's been around for so long, even though he's like our age, a few years older. Right. Like he's a true lifer. So it's gonna be interesting. I know the quarterback there, it's if they fall in love with the guy. That's the thing. You only need one team to fall in love with a player, especially a quarterback. And so even if they might not like Daniels, a team might love Daniels, or maybe a team wants to jump up to 2 to take Daniels, and they get May, or Williams, or something weird can happen. You never know how these things shake out, but they're just such an interesting team right now, just for 100 million reasons. And then another interesting team, at least to me, maybe football nerdom, is the Arizona Cardinals. And they can kind of get some great things here as this draft falls. They don't technically really need a quarterback. Kyler looked decent in Drew Petzing's offense, and they can still build around it. They got a little bit of a war chest in this draft as well. Some of the scenarios with the Cardinals that you kind of think were shaking out, some of the players that they might be looking at.
Well, obviously, if the quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, then Arizona's taken the first non-quarterback in the draft, and all signs would point towards Marvin Harrison Jr. Just the fit makes way too much sense, so that maybe it's not going to happen. But if Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., it would just be hard to see anybody else, right? I mean, I would love to hear your take on what you think is best for the Cardinals in this spot. What do you think they should do, and what do you think they might end up doing?
I think they stand pat, or I think they should stand pat. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is that type of player that it's a true needle mover that would be comfortable with them taking. And if they feel like they want to keep building up through the trenches, move back a little bit and take one of the top tier tackles, I understand that plan. But Harrison Jr. is one where I'm comfortable, where it's like, let's just stand pat and let's just take this guy, because it's just with him and Trey McBride and with Kyler and what that offense I think could do, that's like, that could really supercharge things quicker than even I was anticipating for them. So to me, that it's just they take the BPA and just get assets get these dudes because we have enough lateral already. They have 6 picks, I think, in the top 90. I think it was so
seven in the top 105. Yeah,
we don't really need some of those more dart throws. So it's actually get the blue chip type of player.
And we saw last year how willing they were to move around. I mean, they were wheeling and dealing throughout the draft, and so we at least know that they have that in them to move around to make sure they get their guys. And to your point, the draft capital they have, it just gives them more options. They can stockpile more picks, or they can use that picks to be aggressive. And if they really want somebody, go and get them. So with having 2 picks in the first round, this pick obviously at 4, but then also pick 27. That maybe pick 27. That's where you be aggressive. If say they have 22 first round grades in this draft, maybe that's where you're aggressive at 27 and make sure you go up into the top 24 picks to get one of your first round grades. This will be interesting for Arizona. I agree with you. I mean, quarterback, I feel set for at least one more year. Even if Kyler struggled this year, the contract situation, I don't think they can move away from that. So you're looking at surrounding him with more help, whether that's the offensive line, whether that is a pass catcher. But they're sitting in a good spot there. Yeah, it just feels like Marvin Harrison Jr. Destined to wear a Cardinals uniform at this point.
It really does. Even wasn't your comparison Larry Fitzgerald?
Larry Fitzgerald. I just the way that they play, and it makes a lot of sense to see that marriage happen again. Yeah.
Technicians and also like an outstanding,
but also freaks.
Yeah. It's not very fair. This is the thing too, is that if something goes weird and say the Patriots, someone moves up, say a team loves Harrison Jr. or something like that, and they move up with the Patriots to 3, and the Patriots like, oh, we don't really like Daniels that much, and something just funky like that happens where the quarterback doesn't go 3, Daniels is still sitting there, the Cardinals are at 4, now they're in that kind of spot where it's like, oh, anybody want to call? Like, hey, like they can move back, and it just so many avenues just going to open up with these kind of 2 little spots. So it's just be so interesting. But
I was going to mention that at number 5. I think this.
Yes, the Chargers. Yes.
Yeah, because I think that's if say the Patriots go Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. They look at the value of a number 1 type of receiver, and that's the direction they go. And say the Cardinals at the next pick. I mean, Malik Neighbors, in my opinion, is a top 3 player in this class. Over the moon about with Malik Neighbors. I saw you watching a little bit more of Neighbors.
It was Daniels, and then my eyes got drawn to Neighbors a little bit longer. I was trying to cut up some clips of Daniels, and I was like, oh, there goes Malik Neighbors, just turning the corner on 15 guys. It seems like.
Yeah, he's just I don't know. I think he's a special player. And so if you're the Cardinals at 4, very realistic they could bypass some trade offers and take Malik Neighbors at 4. And then if at number 5 with the Chargers, that's where I think Harbaugh wants to put his stamp on this roster. Same thing with the new GM, Ortiz, Joe Ortiz coming over from Baltimore. So, right now I think the Chargers, they just have the original picks in each round, but they're going to want more. So if New England passes, Arizona passes, that 3rd quarterback is available at that 5th spot, that all of a sudden, that's the power position. Teams trying to get ahead of the Giants at number 6 to get that 3rd quarterback. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, they're to me, like if they do Sam Pat, I'm saying, or they stay in this kind of top 10 range, maybe they just do kind of like a little flop there. I feel like just Harbaugh is going through the trenches. Like I don't know, that just feels like him.
Well, look how
that's how he's built everything. So it's just
the way Michigan beat Ohio State the last 3 years, the way they won a national championship, the foundation was in the trenches, and it is very logical to think that Harbaugh would look to replicate that formula in Los Angeles. And so, if this is where we see that first offensive lineman off the board, it would totally make sense. And I think it's an interesting part of this. As we do mock drafts and make these projections, you think about Harbaugh and how unique this is because of his familiarity with so many of these prospects. Not just the Michigan guys, but guys he recruited or guys he played against. I don't think Michigan went like super hard after Joe Alt because it always felt like he was either Notre Dame or Iowa. But obviously, he's familiar with him from college. He coached against Olu Fashanu. He coached against J.C. Latham. And he recruited both those guys too. So unlike most head coaches in this process, Harbaugh already has a perspective and an informed opinion on several of these top prospects, several of them on the offensive line. So that's definitely an interesting, wrinkle with him and what the Chargers might do.
That's no, it's a great point, because it also is very telling that I always just remember Pete Carroll's first draft pick when he took Earl Thomas over Taylor Mays.
Yeah.
Over his guy from USC. And I remember that was just a big indicator that the path that Pete might be going down. It was like, oh, you're not going to take it, because Mays was so hyped, remember? And he was so stiff.
He was such a freak, because height, weight, speed, right?
Oh, always. Speed straight line.
But
don't make it
exactly. Exactly.
But
I think that's also, with these Michigan players, Harbaugh will know better than anybody else, who he would be eyeing to draft, and that's interesting. But let's have the Brock Bowers conversation here too, right? The idea of pairing Brock Bowers with Herbert, it's a lot of fun, right? I mean, we know how much Harbaugh likes to incorporate the mismatched tight end in the offense. Luke Schoonmaker was a second-round pick last year. A.J. Barner is going to be a day 3 pick this year. Colston Loveland, probably a first-rounder next year. And Eric All, who transferred to Iowa this past year, he's going to get drafted this year. So this is where the debate comes in about tight end value, but it's just not quite that simple with Bowers, because he's not just a tight end. And you can't label him as a tight end and build your argument against him. It's going to fall apart. It doesn't work like that, because he's not just a tight end. The Georgia offense was literally constructed around him and all the different things he can do at slot, wing, inline, motion, backfield, whatever you want him to do, he can do. And I know people will bring up Kyle Pitts, the fact that he hasn't lived up to being a top 5 pick. He had over 1,000 yards receiving his rookie year, then multiple surgeries. And his head coach was just fired because he couldn't get consistency from the quarterback position. So if we're going to talk about Kyle Pitts, let's at least use proper context here. And I get the conversation or the argument that you shouldn't pay top 5 overall money to a tight end, because once you do, he's going to be one of the highest paid in the league at his position. But I think you have to think about it. It's all relative, because later on, you're probably going to be paying a little bit less. If you franchise tag him, it's going to be a little bit less than a wide receiver. If you give him an extension, it's probably going to be less than if he was a top 3 receiver in the league. So I do think it's fair to point that out, but it's also relative to how you might be paying him later on. And so I'm not saying the pick should be Bowers, but I do think that he belongs on the short list all the way up until draft night.
Yes, and it's just comfort level where you can kind of just like, all right, how can we use him in the offense? I think Bowers just, I keep saying this, but the offensive weapon term, which I always am like, whatever, because it's some 5'8" gadget guy that they can't figure out how to get on the field. This is actually a good use of the term for Brock Bowers, because he truly can win isolated. That is a pass catching threat at any position. And I think you brought up the contract stuff. This is where this has to break for some people because of how Bowers is used. It's like calling Kelsey a tight end. No, he's a receiver. He's a pass catcher. Like he gets split out like a wide receiver. He lines up in the slot like a wide receiver, and he, just gets asked to block a couple times. But if you look at it that way, just pass catchers and just money wise, if Bowers is a 1B in your pass catching arsenal, maybe even a 1A, he can get to that level, as a true primary threat in a good passing offense. You're underpaying him then, because then you got to look at it as a guy that's getting 120 targets, whether that's receiver or tight end. It's just pass catcher. So that's where Bowers to me is he's just his own type of player. You just got to ignore the TE. You just got to look at him as an offensive pass catcher that you move around. But that's
what he is. Yeah.
He's so good.
He probably has the widest range of drafts where you could land in the top 20 picks, right? Yes. I mean, he could go here at 5. And it wouldn't be shocking. He could fall. I don't know. Like what? It's hard to really figure out how far he could actually fall. I don't think he's fallen out of the top 15. Right? I mean, he's just too good. He's just too good. Too much of an impact player. And again, I think if you get hung up on the like you said, the TE next to his name, I think you're missing the point on what this guy can do. You're being very close-minded to what he actually gives you on the football field. So, he's going to be a really interesting debate here as we go through the process. he's a good player. That's all I know.
That's it.
And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Give me the good players. Let's build this offense. And I think that there will be a team more than happy to draft Brock Bowers. And I do think the conversation starts here at number 5. Okay, right now going into the combine, if you had to put one name next to the Chargers, which name are you putting?
Ooh, I'd actually go with Joe Alt.
Yeah,
because it would be a tackle of some sort. But one of the tackles, but I actually go with Alt because it's just everything you mentioned with the background stuff like that too. And right. I'd be interested in seeing him. The plan was Slater, and I keep making this argument. Right. Slater has played right tackle in college, so that'd be but also think Fashanu and Alt have athleticism to play on the right side and kind of just wherewithal to play on the right side if you did want to do that too.
Right, they don't have that experience, but they could do it. I think that's the fair
6 month prep. Yeah, I know it's hard, and I know offensive line guys say it's harder than it. I know. That's why you give them five months to train for it. That's why you do that. Like, yes, it's not the long term plan. We'll figure it out, but just to get through this year.
That's why you have offensive line coaches to during the draft process to make sure that they give stamp of approval and say, we think he can do it, no problem. And then it's up to that coach to actually make it happen. So I think that makes a lot of sense. If you put one of these tackles, I think Joe Alt's a top tackle in the draft. You put him at number 5. I think that makes sense when you look at the foundation of what Jim Harbaugh wants to be. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. This next one, which is also a true wildcard team to me, this is Giants team. The New York Giants are at pick 6. It seems commonly so far, a lot of us, including myself, have mocked the second receiver to them after Marvin Harrison Jr., whichever one that you want to pick there. But what are some scenarios, some of the situations that the Giants are going to be going through next 6, 7, 8 weeks? Because it seems like a lot that they could be doing.
Offensive line is obviously a big need here. They have to get better on the offensive line, but where do they see the best way of doing that? They drafted Evan Neal top 10 2 years ago, and that hasn't worked out yet. Are they at the point where they would move him inside to guard full time and you draft a tackle here? Obviously, you feel good about Andrew Thomas, a left tackle. What are you doing at right tackle, and what are you doing with Evan Neal? That's kind of a big thing that is a little bit up in the air right now. Wide receiver makes a ton of sense because regardless of who your quarterback is, who's your number 1 target in this offense? It's hard to feel great about who your number 1. Who's your difference maker? Who's going to be the guy that defensive coordinators are worried about in the passing game? They just don't have that guy right now. And so if you have a chance, if Malik Neighbors there, to me, I don't know how you're passing on Malik Neighbors. But I understand why they might go offensive line. And then, of course, if a quarterback makes it there. If you're the Giants, and let's say that Daniels gets past New England at 3, what are you willing to put draft capital forward to go and get Daniels if you're the GM of the Giants?
Right. And with also the contract with Jones still paid, because then you're paying that room. You're not kind of getting that kind of discount that you want with the cheap contract. If they like him, that's the thing. If they do, I totally understand it. If they're like, this is our guy, yes, there's some differences with him and Jones, but there's also actually some weird similarities, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we talk more about this. Some of the ways they attack throwing the ball is actually kind of funny, but I think it's a little rich for me unless they really like the guy because of just what they need and everything like that. Because also the special talent that Neighbors is, and also I just think, because I think if say he did go to Daniels is still there at 4, we'll just say that, so they would have to flop 2 spots. I'm sure they're getting so many calls to move up. So I'm sure all these other teams are going like, hey, we'll give up this. We'll give up this. Do I want to get in that bidding war? And then I'm like, okay, where are we at already? And we're not even getting the discount in place anyway. So that to me is a little rich.
Yeah. Well, the Giants, they do have 3 picks or 4 picks in the top 70. They have the 2 twos.
All that. Yeah.
Right. And so they do have a little bit of extra draft capital to go make it happen. And they are kind of the first in line, right? So if you're the Cardinals and you don't want to move back too far, you move back from 4 to 6, and you're guaranteed to still get one of the receivers. If you want to go tackle, you go that direction too. So instead of going from 4 down to say 12 in Denver or even 8 Atlanta, you feel better about going to 6. So that plays a factor too. It's the Giants are at the head of the line when it comes to these conversations. And again, this is we've been talking about this draft since August, how it's going to be a top-heavy draft. This is the year to be drafting in the top 10. So even though we are talking about teams possibly trading back, you don't want to move back too far. You want to try and stay as close to the top 10, if not in the top 10, as you can, because you want to get one of these blue chippers. You want to get one of these guys that are true difference-making or project as difference-making talents. And so, we mentioned with the Chargers wanting to move back. If the Cardinals want to move back, the fact that you're trading back just 2 or 3 spots instead of 5 or 6, that matters when you're talking about the top 10, and especially this top 10.
Yeah, you say, okay, yeah, it's only a day 2 pick, quote unquote, only a day 2 pick. All right, they're getting up that, but we got, the drop off at the receiver position's there, or the drop off at this position. No, that matters so much. I know. I've been even just trying to think what a 6-4 swap would cost. Because when the Trubisky trade with the 49ers, with the Bears and 49ers, I think they gave up a third just to swap the one spot. Off the top of my head, that's what I remember. So I'm just trying to even think what those kind of 1 pick swaps or 2 pick swaps are in the top 10. But it's a great point. This is a top heavy draft compared to maybe even recent years where we had some really good role kind of player draft, like that 20 to 40 spot was kind of the sweet spot. This is the opposite. Yeah. This is just like loaded premium spots.
Well, here, let me ask you this, because I know how you feel about May. Let's say Daniels goes 2, and then let's say the Patriots go in a different direction at 3. Say May is there at 4, and you're the GM of the Giants. What are you trading to make sure you get May at 4?
Oh,
and
boy.
Kids listen to this show. Okay, so yes, because this is a family-friendly show, so keep it. I want to know what you would give up. Right? What would you give up to go up and make sure you get May at 4 and eliminate all doubt? Make sure that the Cardinals at 4 aren't considering any other offers. They know this is your best offer. Here it is. What is that?
Because I would offer a second. That's what I'd offer.
So
and I'm
pick
sure
39.
Yes.
Which would be the earlier of the 2 seconds that the Giants have.
Yes, that's what I would offer, and I'm sure they would go, well, no, we want a future first, and that's so that would be how much I love them. It would be one of those two. It'd either be this year's second or next year's first. But that's such a rich flop to do that for. But I would say it's a quarterback that you're desperate. And that's the thing. That's a desperation. I would try to stay hold and just that it's a day 2 pick from this year. But man, I know they would be asking for a future first, and that'd be a tough one to. I would do it. I know it's rich.
You would do it. Let's be honest.
I would do it. I know, but that's me, and that's the thing. That's perfect. That's a perfect thought experiment, though. Because for Daniels, I'd be like, I don't know. No, but for May, yes. But that's how these GMs are going to be.
I think I'm with you. I think I would do it too.
Robert does with me with Dak all the time. He'll go, well, this guy or this quarterback. I'll be like, yeah, no. And he goes, well, what's Dak?
Right.
Well.
No, hey, look, if you believe in the guy, then you go get him. Simple as that. And it's rich, it's costly, but you know what? The Texans believed that much in Will Anderson, and they went and got him. And we're not talking right now about how the Texans really screwed up and gave up the 27th pick for the defensive rookie of the year.
We haven't mentioned any edges yet.
Right, exactly. So, and I think you also factor in, this is something we haven't talked about yet, but projecting forward, next year's quarterback class is not on the level of this. Now, maybe we have a Jaden Daniels who ascends. You can't predict that. Could a Quinn Ewers really make that jump and take that step that you're hoping for in his development next year at Texas? Sure, it's possible. But right now, with the information we have, the evidence in front of us, next year's draft at quarterback does not look as strong as what we have this year. And so if you have a chance to go get your guy, I'm not going to fault any team that is aggressive and goes and makes it happen. If it doesn't work out, your GM's going to be out of a job. But you know what? He went down swinging and went down trying to get a guy that you think is a difference maker for your franchise.
Yeah, that's why the May one for me is like, I'd be fine. I'd be comfortable with that one. I'm trying to just even think of other ones that moved up. The That's a great point about the class, though, because even that with the Will Anderson one, I've looked at this edge class, and there's no impact, no one even close to that
Yeah.
tier of a Will
That's
Anderson.
why I didn't slam the Bears for trading a second round pick for Montez Sweat. I know it was risky because they hadn't given him a contract at that point, and you gave the player all the leverage when it comes to that extension. I get it. I understand why many were against that trade when it happened. But I wasn't going to slam it because I know how this pass rush class was looking, yes. And nobody's close to Montez Sweat with what you were going to be able to get at that second round pick. So, yes, and again, it was costly. It was a very expensive trade with what the contract you had to give out. But for the Bears, I thought it made all the sense in the world. And with the pass rushers that will be available in the second round this year, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah, and Montez Sweat also made sense to me because he barely missed time. I think the only time he missed time in the NFL is when he broke his jaw. And it was just like you said, it's one they needed players that like you said, for the Bears, it made so much sense for them because they needed a very good or above player, that guy that can be a Pro Bowl quality player in the right situation. And also, if you want to build out a pass rush, it's been proven now that you obviously need more than one guy. So how do we get more than one guy? Well, we have to start with one guy. That's how you get to 2 or 3 good pass rushers. You need to start with one. So no, I'm with you on the Montez Sweat one. That one's, I think, even with the price they paid, I think it's aged already in 4 months. Been just a great trade for them. Everything he's done there.
At this time, 2 years ago, I think they regretted the Chase Claypool trade.
Yes.
At this time, right now, they don't regret the Montez Sweat trade, and I don't think they will. Moving forward this year.
That's so hard. You usually have to take a first round, or you pay these guys a premium. Well, okay, they paid a premium. Boom, done. But speaking of premium, pick 7, which I've been the popular Joe Alt destination from Notre Dame, offensive tackle here at the Titans. The Titans, to me, seems very. They actually are set up kind of nice for what they need, which is offensive tackle and receiver.
It's a theme in this top 10, right? I mean,
the
Giants, the Chargers, the Cardinals. I mean, all of these teams could use a pass catcher or an offensive lineman, and that's the strength of this top 10. So yeah,
the Jets, another one. Like,
exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of that.
Chicago at 9. Yeah,
I know. It's set up nicely for them. I know. It's every time I do one of these mocks or even the big board, I'm like, I got to throw a defensive player in here at some point because it's just offense. Right. But yeah, the scenarios for the Titans. Any kind of possibilities of them doing anything different, or do you kind of see the same with just kind of offensive line and receivers?
Yeah, I mean, I get the thinking that, okay, we have Bill Callahan now, right? He's in the mix. We don't have to invest heavy on the offensive line. I'm kind of the opposite of that, where I'm going to invest in the offensive line because I'm going to draft the guys that Callahan stamps with his approval, right? And the chances of you hitting on those picks and making the offensive line a strength, it skyrockets if you're investing early picks with this offensive line coach and the development process. And I think, let's look at this front office. Rand Carthon, he's a former running back. You think he knows offensive line play pretty well? Anthony Robinson, he's the assistant GM. He came over from Atlanta, right? Yeah, so you're familiar with him. Yeah. He's going to have a major say in the Tennessee draft room. You think about where he came from in Atlanta and how they built that offensive line. They did it, a lot of those early round picks on the offensive line. So I just think that everything points to offensive line with this pick. You just keep building on that line. Peter Skoronski last year, whether that's Joe Alt or Fashanu this year, I just think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's building strength, a true identity for your team. And I think any team loves to do that. The Lions it worked out perfectly because they already had that strength and they just, let's drop Sewell into it. Okay, cool. And that leads their team. You could see just how that team, the impact of that unit. And I think it just makes sense. I think that's what they want to do. Obviously, with Bryce Callahan being there now and just being the son of an offensive line coach, I can relate. No, but that's great with A-Rob too. A-Rob's has a Florida State background too, and I used to always kind of joke with him about that, being from Wisconsin and stuff. Like, oh, you guys don't know the line play. No, he knows his line play. So yeah, I think they're going to definitely be amping that up a bit. The next one, our former employers. That's the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. They could be a move-up candidate. This could be a JJ McCarthy landing spot. Maybe this could be a really.
This is where that conversation starts, right?
Right.
Is the JJ McCarthy conversation? Yeah. And I think somewhere in that 8 to 12 range is where I think JJ McCarthy is going to end up. And we're 2 months before the draft, so
yes.
I was a little hesitant to tweet that. I tweeted it last week, and I was a little hesitant to do it because it wouldn't be surprising if he ends up being Will Levis and falling a little bit for end of the first round. Quarterback is such a tricky thing, but there's enough love for him already, and there was love for him in the summer. I mean, he was my 18th or 19th prospect in my top 50 in August. I was hearing love for him in the summer. Once coaches get involved with JJ McCarthy, that's what's really going to put him over the top, and why I believe he's going to be a top 12 pick. And this is where at Atlanta, where I think that conversation starts. But I do think Atlanta is going to be aggressive, and they're going to be making calls about, okay, because if you're the Giants, I think Atlanta's who you're worried about. Because if that third quarterback does get past the Patriots, Falcons are who you're worried about if you're the Giants, moving up to go get that guy. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But maybe we'll already know before the draft what Atlanta's going to do, meaning a Justin Fields trade, meaning Kirk Cousins, whatever. Maybe they show their hand before the draft, and we know because if you're the Falcons, you're kind of looking at all your options. You're thinking, you know what, we just don't feel great about us getting one of these top 3 quarterbacks. And we like JJ McCarthy, but we need someone that's ready to go now. And so McCarthy maybe not the best fit for Atlanta at 8. So, I think maybe we see this as a situation where they go quarterback prior to the draft, and then at 8, they can take the top player on their board.
Right. And to me, this could be the defensive first spot too.
Could be.
See an edge, could see a corner, Arnold. I think it's both our corner, Terry and Arnold. This is, on the pod last week with Robert, or it came out earlier this week. I kind of was doing math with McCarthy, and I was like, or quarterback math, I should say, because it's kind of just like convoluted math. It's the inflation, I was like, well, Dane and I, we kind of have similar grades. I go, say I have a second round grade on McCarthy. Okay, you give the half round inflation. Okay, that's the late first round. I got a team really likes him. That's 10 spots up. That's how you get a guy in the top 12. It's like just like that. That's how a second round graded quarterback ends up in the top 12. So even going off your tweet too, I started just kind of doing the math on the air, and I was like, yeah, that I could see that. That's how Mac Jones went. What did Mac Jones end up going? 15?
15, yeah.
I kind of grade him more or less the same tier, get that inflation, and that's how these guys end up in kind of this top half of the round. I think they're two wildly different players, but like you said, once coaches watch McCarthy, and I keep saying this point ad nauseum, the Shanahan coaches are going to like this guy a lot.
Yes,
this is the type of guy they love all the way through. So that's why he's going to have a lot of fans, and Falcons have one of those coaches.
Zach Robinson.
Right? It makes it's a very, very big point. But yeah, I have been joking and giving them a receiver in the mock. That's just to really annoy everybody.
Right.
I just been enjoying doing that. But yeah, it seems like the quarterback one's way live.
The thing with McCarthy though is I do think he needs time. And I do look, when you look at Atlanta, it just feels like they're in a position where they want somebody right away. And so, right. And that shouldn't drive your conversation about what to do at quarterback, but it does matter. And so that makes it an interesting part of, what quarterback they might target there at number 8. But yeah, and to your point, this is probably the most likely spot where we could see that first defensive player off the board, or the earliest we could see a defensive player off the board. But okay, if you're at number 9, you're Chicago. I kind of mentioned this last week. I'm looking at my options about moving up to go get one of these receivers. I know it's a deep draft at receiver. But if I'm Ryan Poles, I'm going. And if Neighbors or Odunze fall enough, I don't know. I'm going to go get them because I just the chance to pair one of these guys with DJ Moore, and you have your quarterback Caleb Williams, your offensive line's going to be better next year. You've got the tight end in place. I mean, this offense, all of a sudden, the optimism around this offense is you can get pretty excited about it. So if I'm Chicago, that's what I'm going to try and do. And I'm not going to sit. Maybe one of these receivers, maybe one of those top 3 receivers falls me at 9. I'm going to be aggressive and I'm going to go get them. I don't like. What would it cost, you think, to move up from 9 to Let's see one of these receivers gets passed out of the top 6. So if I'm going from 9 to 7, what's that going to cost me?
That's probably day 2 pick, right? That's maybe say a third. Would because I'm trying to think because I've seen team ones. I've seen 2 1-pick swaps, and teams usually go for like a 4th or a 3rd or a future 3rd. I'm trying to just even think. It all depends. That's the thing too. It's like what you want to crank out of it because that's what I'm starting at, and then some negotiations work. So I don't know. What do you think would there a 2-pick swap? Because that's not going to be more than that, would it?
No, I think a third is. I think that's makes sense. And if you're the Bears, you hope so because you don't have a 2nd round pick.
No,
so yeah. Now, if you make this trade, you don't pick again until the 4th round. So like pick 111. Yeah. You're taking day 2 off. Okay, and so they have pick 75. So it takes pick 9 and pick 75 to guarantee you one of these top 3 receivers. So would you rather have? Okay, who are they going at number 9 if they don't take a receiver? Let's just say it's a pass rusher, or say they take the top pass rusher off the board. Say it's Dallas Turner, because I think they feel okay with Braxton Jones, a left tackle, Darnell Wright at right tackle. Let's just say they take Dallas Turner at number 9. Yeah. Okay, so Dallas Turner at 9, and then who's the receiver they take at 75? I'll pull up my top 100. Who's the closest receiver to 75? It's Ricky Pearsall. He's at 78.
Pearsall, right?
Okay, so would you rather have Dallas Turner and Ricky Pearsall, or would you rather have Neighbors or Odunze, one of those 2? Neighbors
or Odunze, and that's just
so what?
There's a tier break in the position. Yeah, even grades. This is why when you look at the big board, it's like this is where the tier breaks happen. No, Robert kind of posed this question too. He goes, "You say it's a deep receiver class. Wouldn't you be more comfortable with the Bears maybe taking this next tier or 2 tiers down of a receiver in the 2nd round?" I was like, but these 3 are special, like and that changed my thinking too. These are true needle movers to me, and I think you as well. So I like that thought experiment though, because it makes sense. Like you said, these guys walk in and it's like boom, they're the alpha of the offense. They can eat those 10 targets a game, and that matters as opposed to another guy that could be more of an auxiliary role.
Yeah, so, it's only going to help Caleb Williams in his development. So yeah, feel good about what this will do for the offense as a whole. I don't know. I'm going to be aggressive here, but I don't know. They're going to have options. Not having that 2nd round pick though, taking a day 2 off basically, that's a tough pill to swallow. But again, I'm going to sit there on day 2 and watch Rome Odunze highlights if I'm Ryan Poles, and I'm going to feel really good about my offense moving forward.
Him, Odunze, and Moore is like perfect synergy too. Yeah. Like for an X and a Z, it's like, it's exactly what you want too. It's just their complementary skill sets. I know Bears fans are just salivating right now. If you don't give them the exact receiver that they hyped up that week, they get so mad. They get so mad at you. Number 10, another one that I don't know. I feel like the position here it kind of sets up nicely for them, but we have the Jets. This is the JC Latham spot for me. That's why he's offensive tackle 3 from Alabama. For me, but any other scenarios or situations for the Jets that you see, Dane? Because I don't know, maybe I've just pigeonholed myself in my line of thinking here that they would just probably go with an offensive tackle here.
Well, I think that obviously it depends on what your general manager Aaron Rodgers wants to do. I mean, it feels like it's going to be something that's going to help Aaron Rodgers. It's going to help this offense because they're all in for this year. We don't know what 2025 is going to look like, but we know 2024. Yeah, right. The defense is going to hold its own. So this is going to be a pass catcher, or it's going to be a pass catcher who they believe can help right away, or it's going to be an offensive lineman they think can help right away. And is Olufashinu still available here? If he's off the board, what does their offensive line stack look like? Is it Latham, who is... and some teams even have Latham on the board as a guard. How does he fit with their plans? If it's not Latham, is it Fuaga from Oregon State? How does their stack really? Then you look at Tyler Guyton, you look at Amarius Mims. I don't think that those guys are far enough in their development where you feel great about drafting them right away because
that's a Packers pick, not a Jets pick. Yeah,
right, exactly. This is also where I think Brock Bowers makes a ton of sense. Because again, you can't look at him as just a tight end and him, oh yeah, he's an upgrade over Tyler Conklin or Jeremy Rucker. You can't just look at it just like that. You have to look at him as an offensive weapon and what he can do as a whole. And so, our writer Zach Rosenblatt over at The Athletic did a nice piece today, kind of laying out the options for the Jets, and it's all pass catchers and it's all offensive linemen. So it just depends on how their board stacks out and who's available for them starting at number 10.
I threw this out, and I meant it more just as a body type comparison, just like how they look. And that was Fuaga reminded me of Bakhtiari, just how their stances were and how they look and stuff. Like they do not play alike at all. That's what I want to reiterate. That I did not want to say like these guys play alike. Their body type. So I was like, oh, I don't know, makes sense for the Jets. Maybe that, Aaron's just like, hey, that guy has the same kind of like little similar stance and body type. Maybe that actually works out. We get him over here. But no, that was I watched a little of Fuaga versus Latu this week, which was interesting. That was a fun little matchup. Latu
Fuaga, he held his own. Yeah,
it was a back and forth, classic, nice little, high prospect back and forth that you like to see. Right. Now we're getting to the back-to-back. We'll get these last two picks here, and we've mentioned them several times. They might be move-up candidates, but we got the Vikings at 11. Vikings are interesting because they're kind of like the Falcons in a way, where it's like, hey, they have this kind of offense. They could go with Kirk Cousins, or are they going to build to the future at their quarterback position as well? But Vikings are a very interesting team. They can move around a lot. Where some other scenarios, something there, scenarios that you see maybe with the Vikings right now.
One of the worst kept secrets in last year's draft was how much the Vikings wanted to draft a quarterback. It didn't happen. The board didn't fall that way. But now we go into this draft, and I think it's fair to assume, again, they're going to be hunting quarterbacks in the draft. And if I'm J.J. McCarthy, I think this is where I want to go. This is the landing spot. The Vikings, you bring back Kirk Cousins on a 1-year deal. You draft McCarthy to be the future. Love the fit with Kevin O'Connell and his offense. And, we talked about McCarthy being, I said he'd be a top 12. There's a good chance he's a top 12 pick. I expect him to be a top 12 pick. Part of the reason I said that is because who's picking in the top 12? And you look at 11 here, 12, Denver. Either of these landing spots I think would make sense. And I think especially with O'Connell, you look at the way he wants to run quick game and the way he likes to get his quarterbacks in rhythm. He'll let him use his legs. He'll let him move the pocket, and he'll kind of game plan from there. You think about sail concepts and McCarthy's ability to process and be accurate, especially over the middle. And you look at Michigan, you look at their pro-style spread offense that they ran. There's a lot of parallels what I think O'Connell likes to do in terms of exploiting the defense, using motions, using alignment to create mismatches.
Same way.
Yeah. It's all stuff McCarthy was very good at doing in Ann Arbor. So I certainly understand why not everybody is all in on McCarthy being a top 12 pick. I get it. I'm not sure I would draft him that early. He was 24 or whatever on my top 100.
Yep.
Right. And so like him, but it's obviously an expensive bill to pay and a risk to draft him that early when the body of work isn't great. But Mac Jones was a 15th overall pick, and I believe he had fewer dropbacks than J.J. McCarthy did in college. So it's not crazy. Anthony Richardson didn't even come close. Obviously, he was a totally different skill set and talent and all that. But when talking about J.J. McCarthy, he's sharp, he's accurate, he's mobile. I think the biggest thing, he's going to blow away coaches with the intangibles. And I think that's going to be a factor here with Minnesota. And again, the love for McCarthy is not new. This isn't like a recency bias type of thing. He was a top 20 prospect for me back in the summer. It's a guy that teams have been identifying as, hey, there's something here. And for the right fit, I think it makes sense. Minnesota could certainly be that right fit.
And he's the size thing is my biggest negative with him right now because he's sub 200. But I started
Combine will be big.
For the weight.
Yeah. Jaden Daniels, same thing. Last year it was Bryce Young. Was he be over 200 pounds? He got to 204, and then he was right back down, probably 192 the rest of the year. With Jaden Daniels, I think the number is going to be, can he get up to 212? I think that'll be the number to watch for with Daniels. And then with JJ McCarthy, I think it's 210. Can he be comfortably over 210 pounds? And so that's going to be interesting to the combine. That's one of those numbers that I'd be very eager to see.
Yeah, they drink a lot of water.
Yes.
Scott Tolzien told me about his water, how much water he drank before his weigh-in because he wanted to break that 210 threshold as well.
Wow.
No, but McCarthy too is like, so I was looking at weight stuff, and I noticed like Lamar and Vic were two guys under 210 that have had success, and Mark Bulger was another one. So I was looking under 205. I was just curious. So I just looked at a simple stat on Pro Football Reference, which is adjusted yards per attempt, which is adjust for touchdowns and interceptions. I just looked at 7. And 7 yards or adjusted yards or more a year. And why that number is, if anybody in the top half of the league this year was 7 or more. So basically, average or better quarterback in the last 20-ish years. So the only quarterbacks sub 205 to break that number, 7 in the last since 2000 are Jeff Garcia, who played in this type of offense, Aaron Brooks, who was his own kind of thing, and then Kirk Cousins was the other one. Yeah,
interesting.
Same threshold, 7 yards or more. If you went 8 yards or more, which is like, okay, an excellent season or more, Joe Montana, Joe Theismann, and Kirk Cousins. Yeah, wow. I heard those guys. But all these, but I watch, and if you look at McCarthy, he's listed right now, like 6'3", whatever he is, 198, 202, somewhere out there. Cousins, 6'2" and change, 6'3". He's listed 205. I think he weighed about the same at the combine.
He was 6'0", 214 at the combine. Yes.
And now he's listed at 205 on the pro charts. Right. Yep. So it tells you how much water weight he had. But that's where they're comfortable with that body type. Maybe I'm not, because I like more kind of a different flavor of quarterback. But they are fine with that because he stands in the pocket. He moves well in the pocket. Like, he has great pocket feel. That's something that grew up. That's why I like him more than I did even 2 months ago. The more you watch him, the more you watch those dropbacks, the more you see his feel in the pocket, his timing, his willingness to just work over the middle. That is such a huge thing, and that's what they love. And he's comfortable throwing left or right. Hey, this team, these guys like bootlegs and play actions. You have to be able to do that. So they're going to like him. They're going to like a lot.
And the athlete that he is. I mean, he's a much better athlete than Kirk Cousins even is, in terms better. Of, and I'm not just talking about, scrambling and just moving the pocket and being a guy that's not going to be, stationary. He can do some different things with his arm angles. And I mean, that catch he had, the adjustment he made on that catch against Alabama tells you what kind of athlete that he is. So, Kirk Cousins is not quite what JJ is. It's
same body type, a little bit different type of flavors, some more skills though. So, but that I just thought that was interesting. I was like, this was the other little skinny guy that's worked out, and it was Kirk Cousins. And Kirk, another thing, both these guys tough as hell. McCarthy and Cousins. Cousins is an all-time tough guy, and I think more people have respected it recently, which is really cool to see. But I think McCarthy's got some balls in there in the pocket. The last one, this dirty dozen of this mock simulator, whatever we just want to call this mock scenario. We'll let Marissa come up with the title. But we have the Denver Broncos, who are also kind of some of the stuff we just talked about. The Vikings, maybe kind of pass it over to the Broncos as well. But some of the scenarios here, I know quarterback is one, but any other things that you're thinking of with the Broncos right now?
Yeah, and this is where we could also see the next run on defensive players come. We feel like, okay, Russell Wilson probably not going to be back in Denver. So what direction are they going at quarterback? They only have 2 picks in the top 120. So unless we're talking about future ones, it's going to be hard for Denver to really make a big splash. But this was right around where was when the 49ers moved up for Trey Lance? I mean, was that 11 they were at, or 12? I mean, I mean, and so there's a blueprint out there. If the Denver wanted to be bold and go up to 3 and get that guy, there's a blueprint in place to what it would take. And, it would really take away from your draft spending, but how badly Sean Payton wants to get that quarterback right. And it'll be really interesting what he feels is the best course of action to go get that. I mean, if you're okay, I know this is an unfair question, but best guess, who's the Broncos starting quarterback week 1 in 6 months?
I think it's going to be Jarrett Stidham.
It very well might be.
I know.
Until whoever they have behind him is ready to take over. I mean, who knows?
Jameis going to come on over, but that's what we're talking about. It's one of these grab bag names, Jacoby Brissett. Like, you don't know, like it's one of these names. I know.
Yeah.
So they moved up. The 49ers moved up from 12 to 3. It was about a month before the season, right? It was it was like right
the
when
draft,
yeah. Or that's season. The season, yeah. The draft season, yeah. The draft. Yeah. They gave up that year's first, the following year's first, the following year's third, and the year after first, which is last year's draft. So they gave up 12 overall, what turned into 29 overall, 101 overall, and 29 overall.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a lot.
But using that draft or that as a blueprint, they could do it because we're not talking about second rounders and third rounders this year. We're talking about future ones. So as badly as it would hurt, if they believe enough in one of these 3 quarterbacks, there's at least a possibility they could try to make that move.
Absolutely. And I mean, it just seems like Sean Payton's kind of cranking it up where he's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's push it. He's bringing, it's really turning New Orleans West. Jim Leonard went over there, by the way. I was very interested to see that.
Wisconsin ties there. Yeah.
Wisconsin ties. Yeah. And also just, I was always curious if you ever jumped to the NFL, this kind of a different path. I thought Leonard would take coaching wise, taking the year off and everything, but because some of the stuff he does, a lot of people are copying, which was a lot of Rex Ryan stuff. So it's kind of fun to see that. So I'm curious to see how that rises in the NFL. But Dane, this was awesome. This little dozen scenario thing. We didn't even get to the back 20.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fascinating to see how it changes over the next few weeks at the combine, and then once we get into free agency and all of that, it will be really interesting. But yeah, look forward to seeing you in person here in a week. So it'll be fun. Yeah,
I'll see you soon. Yeah, but we're going to be having a combine primer. It'll come out early next week, so be on the lookout for that on YouTube and our podcast feed. I think it'll be on YouTube. We'll say it's on YouTube and our podcast feed as well. But thank you guys all for joining us. There's going to be plenty of stuff on the Athletic Football Show feed. Prospects for Pros especially. We got the combine. We got plenty of stuff. Pro days. Ton of fun stuff coming up. So make sure to check it out. See you guys next time.